In this lecture, we're going to be touching up on a small part of the animations we're going to be talking about in the rest of the course. And by talking about animations, we can choose to affect how objects look on our screen. And what we're going to be doing is creating the ability to fade in and fade out objects from the screen. Now, all this entails us to do is adjust the alpha property of an object, so from 100% transparency down to 0% transparency. But by using an animation effect, creates a nice transition rather than it just happening like with the blink of an eye. It fades in and fades out. So what we're going to do then is create two buttons into our view. One button's going to fade in our objects, and our second button will fade out the objects. So we've got both kind of options. So I'll name this fade in, and this will be our fade out. There we go. So what we're going to fade out and fade in is we're going to work with two objects for now. So we're going to drag over our label. There we go. And I'll center it. And then we're going to do something completely different. Let's say our segmented control. So you can see that it works with different objects and how to fade in and fade out multiple objects within one piece of code. Okay. So we're going to create now our actions and outlets. So bring up our .h, and we're going to make sure we got two outlets. So one for our segment control. So we do segment control as an outlet. We do our label. There we go. The space is down a bit so I can add in the actions. And then for our actions, just drag and drop these in. These will be our fade in. Make sure that's on action. And then finally our fade out. Nice and easy, making sure that's on action also. Boom, there we go. Okay, so we can close up our assistant editor and go back to our standard editor. And we can leave our interface as it is. So within our view controller.m, we're going to work with our fade in first. Now, as our objects are already faded in, we can't fade them in again. So it's already set as it is. So the first thing you can do once they're faded in is fade them out. So let's start with our fade in anyway. So we do bracket UI view. That's what we need to work with. And then we need to begin the animations. And then in the first highlight section we do nil. And the context we do no. Because what we need to do is set it up manually. So we do again bracket UI view space. And then we need to set the animation duration. So how long it takes to perform this animation effect to get the alpha from 100% to 0% or from 0% to 100%. And we're going to go with 1 second. That's nice and simple. You can adjust it how you like. And then we need to do bracket self dot. Let's start with our segment control. That's the one we're going to work with first. Then we do space set alpha to 1, as this is our fade in one. We're then going to simply quickly copy and paste that and then change the segment control to our label. And then we finish it up by doing bracket UI view space commit animations. There we go. So when we press our fade in button, it will begin an animation. And the animation that we set it to is a manual, which will change the alpha of these two outlets to 1. And it will take 1 second to perform this when it commits the animations. Now we're going to simply copy and paste this into our fade out, and all we need to change is the alpha value. So we change that to 0, which is 100% transparency. Okay, so if you go to build and run and test it out, so as it stands, our animation or our objects have an alpha of 1 already because you can see them. But as soon as we hit fade out, both of them take 1 second to perform that nice crisp animation effect to fade them out by setting their alpha to 0. And then we can choose to fade them back in. But you need to remember, by fading them in and out doesn't hide them from the view. All it's done is made them see-through. For example, I can interact with this segment control. Now if I set it onto first and fade it out, I can select second where it would be and then fade them back in. Now, just because you fade them out doesn't mean they're hidden from the view. You can still interact with them. All it's really doing is setting the alpha down to 0. So they're still there. They're just being the alpha set to 0. Completely hidden. Complete 100% transparency. So again, fade out and fade in. So that's how you can use the animations to create a nice fade effect to fade in and fade out objects. In the next lecture, we can talk about hiding objects completely from the view. So this is not just setting their alpha to 0. This is completely hiding them and revealing them before we go on to enabling and disabling objects further on in our course.